robots will be used as what are referred to adjuncts to the warfighters. They will serve alongside warfighters, just as if you had animals like dogs or mules or whatever they happen to be doing, and carrying out specific missions that human warfighters will either have trouble complying with international humanitarian law or just inherently extremely dangerous for them. Hopefully both of those types of things. So it's really important we maintain a human presence in the battlefield so that we truly know how horrible war is, and use that to guide us to stay away from war as much as we possibly can. Ideally all the time, and I always encourage pacifists to try and find a way to make wars end, although I'm not overly optimistic about the ability to do that, given all recorded human history arguing against the success of that. Although Kant said you can make peace among devils, well, make peace among devils then. But the theory and the practice quite often diverge, and that may be the case here. So hopefully we can find ways to use these to not only, and this is an important distinction where I'm coming from, not only to win wars, which is the bottom line where most militaries are interested in, but rather, in my case, to afford better protection for non-combatants and avoid collateral damage as much as possible. You spoke of Syria, the horrors that occurred to civilians in that space, the sheer numbers of dead that were occasioned by the war that happened in that particular space, to me is unconscionable. We have to do better. And I do believe that technology, in perhaps myriad forms, but at least in this one particular form, can, should, and must help in reducing non-combatant deaths. And that's the reason I believe this technology could have value. I believe to some degree, if done right, and this is the real debatable question, if it's done wrong, it could lead to bad futures, but if done right, it could be the next generation of precision-guided munitions, which would allow targeting targets better, military targets better, as opposed to allowing for the deaths of civilians while you're targeting those sorts of military goals. I don't know if some of your folks have seen this, but with the Jim Kirk Star Trek episode where people, there was a simulation and one side lost, and they said 1,000 people die here and we lost 500 people, and they marched the people into incinerators, and there was no damage to anything around, just the people were killed. You don't need robots to do that. Is that the right answer? No, because again, you lose the aspects of the horrors of war to keep us from going into it in the first place. That's why this human presence must be maintained. Once we start to think of war as antiseptic, we are really going down a wormhole, and we should not even consider doing that. Winning a war is one thing, winning a war justly is another. And even if your enemy chooses to fight in an unjust manner, that does not excuse you from fighting in a just manner as well too. Just war theory, to me, is the underpinnings of all of the Geneva Conventions, and at least most of the ways in which nations have committed to fight. But there are violations of it you can see in recent wars, like World War II. You can see violations occurring in conflict around the world right now. They happen all the time. So the question is, what are we going to do? Are we going to reform the justice system to do better with that? Or are we going to move to an antiseptic type of war, like you say? I don't think that's the answer. Any weapon system, any human army can be used outside of the bounds of acceptability according to the Geneva Conventions and the laws of war. And there should be punishment associated with that. And that's why war crimes tribunals exist.